I told Carl this before we came on today. What I've noticed is that we're becoming a world of initials. You know, we've heard them all. There must be thousands of initialized titles of various sorts. And I've often had the thought that this may be a way of hiding what's really going on. I don't know. Where do you come in on this?
Sometimes it's a benign thing, and then other times it becomes like a standard bearer. It becomes the banner by which we see people and movements rally around. The LGBTQ and its various acronyms, because there's additions to it, become in many respects kind of that flag leading the battle, and it becomes a form of identity. It becomes a rallying call. It becomes, in this case, a social, political, and let's be honest, a spiritual rallying call. And so it's important for us to understand what the language, what language is being used, what the world is saying of itself, and how they define themselves.
We've heard about DEI, for example. If I say DEI, there many people will instantly know what I'm talking about, but many, many more will not.
And the world is full of acronyms. And so when Lighthouse Trails, and I give them credit, my goodness, when the editors there reached out to myself and to a few other authors and said, hey, can we pull together a book of words, a glossary with acronyms, with language, because this is important for Christians. As Christians, we have our own language, don't we?
We certainly do.
So does the global community. So does the political global community. So does the sub-movements and the other changing movements that you see happening all around us. They all have their own language. The LGBTQ has its own language. And so the editors, Deborah and Dave Dabrowski, thought it was very important to put together a glossary for Christians so that we understand the language of the world around us.
Now, let me interrupt. I hate to interrupt because you're so interesting and you've got so many things to say, but these two books, A New Narrative for a New World and A Christian's Perspective on the Social Justice Movement, my reaction to these books, and I read them in preparation for our conversation today, my reaction was, where has all this information been? I needed to know these things. I hear all these, I hear groups and individuals spoken of, usually in terms of these abbreviated ideas.
Right.
And they are initialized, and that's sort of the new way of presenting yourself with a little grouping of initials.
Well, it becomes your identity.
Yes.
You know, and that's how we operate. That's how the world seems to operate. And it's important for us then as Christians, when we see or hear some of these terms, see some of these initials, be able to all of a sudden put together the connecting dots and go, oh, okay, this is what that means. This is what the language means.
Indeed. And so what is it now that when you're writing that you want people to know, and specifically Christians? And I know, listen up, because Carl really has gone into some areas of research that none of us will usually get within miles of.
Well, that's a great question. I think this might be a surprise for your viewers. And this is just a personal takeaway, Gary. That's what this is. I think one of the biggest takeaways is how we as Christians have become so fear-based. Greater is he that's in us than who is in the world. Every knee will bow, Gary. Every knee will bow. We bow in love, but the world will bow in judgment.
Amen. So
why is it that we are afraid? And I mean, we are afraid in the Christian community. We are so afraid. So we present this information so that you're knowledgeable with facts, with sound logic and reason, so that you don't have to surround yourself in a world of speculation. All the memes we throw at each other on social media, stop. How about we stop with creating this self-perpetuating fear? Look at what is true. Look at what the world is doing in a true light, and then be able to present Jesus Christ as ambassadors. So many, many years ago, I was at a Chicago event where we had the U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia speaking. It was at a Chicago Council on Foreign Relations event. And the U.S. ambassador was giving us his job description, what he was going to be doing as he entered the field of global diplomacy. And as he was laying out what it meant to be an ambassador, it hit me. Paul talks in his writings about being an ambassador. Now, he's not writing that in the sense of an analogy or a metaphor. No, he is saying you are an ambassador. It's not that I'm becoming an ambassador. It's not that you're becoming an ambassador. Gary, we are ambassadors.
And I would totally agree with that.
Right. And so as ambassadors, the question is not are we becoming ambassadors, but are we effective as being ambassadors? And so the U.S. ambassador was explaining that, look, and I'm going to put this in Christianese for us. First and foremost, as an ambassador, we are our king's legal and official representatives in a foreign land. You and I are God's legal and official representatives here.
And Carl, it's becoming more and more foreign every day.
It really, really is. Absolutely. Let's take the blinders off and recognize that. And then we know as ambassadors, we are to know our king's power and position, and then to effectively communicate that. But something else that the U.S. ambassador said that I thought was very telling was he says, I have to understand the culture I'm entering. It's not that I'm becoming that culture. It's not that I'm becoming that world. I'm in it, but not of it. I'm like, we need to take that calling of being an ambassador seriously. And so I really hope that these books, my own book, Game of Gods as well, becomes helpful tools to equip you as an ambassador for Christ in a rapidly changing national and global culture.
I have a question, and it's based on what's happening now. I've heard so many people say something like this. I was watching the news the other day, national news, and they were covering something that happened in a grade school system in such and such a city. And Gary, they say to me, you would not believe what they're teaching in school to grade schoolers. And of course I would believe it because I've seen the same thing, but people are surprised by what's going on right now.
Right.
And then when they hear initializations, LGBTQ and others, and there are dozens of them.
WEF, all the other political
DEI.
acronyms. The list is endless.
And they're saying to each other, what do these things mean? I feel like I'm, outside the loop.
Right.
And along comes Carl Teichrib, and he contributes his knowledge to these books in front of me, and we need to know these things.
Right, and it's important. I mean, for your audience, you make a good connecting point in terms of public education. Whether you're a parent or a grandparent, whether you public school, private school, or homeschool, the bottom line is as a parent, you're the one who's responsible for the education of your children to raise them up in a way that is proper. But that is the one area that the world has focused on so heavily. So my own book, Game of Gods, I open up with going to a youth event, an education event called the Global Citizenship 2000 Youth Congress, which happened in 1997, 1,000 days before the year 2000. And it was to build into my country, I'm a Canadian, to build into my country's curriculum the sense of global citizenship education. And so I have a section in the book New Narrative under my glossary about global citizenship and what that means, what that represents. And it meant a complete changeover, a worldview shift from a Judeo-Christian understanding to really what we would, as Christians, describe as a pagan worldview, a worldview of oneness. We're all going to become one world.
And paganism is demonism.
Yes, and so we're seeing this, let's call it what it is, a doctrine of demons. It really is the Genesis chapter 3 fall, where we can be as God. We have this new knowledge. We will transform by transgressing. And so Romans chapter 1 as well. We will serve and worship creation rather than the creator. That's the world we're living in. And then it becomes codified and placed within a curriculum context, and now it's shoved down our children's throats, and they don't know any better.